cents a kilo, that'd be okay. And then, it's just, we're talking about pennies. Look what we pay when we go out for a cup of coffee. So to support our local fair trade coffee houses, to go into ones that don't serve fair trade and ask them to please serve it or why they're not, and to spread it again at home as far as what you buy in your home and your loved ones in your community.
Well, does the Aroma Cooperative sell coffee at $1.47 or whatever that price was you provided?
You mean, do they sell it to us for that?
To whoever the buyers.
Okay, so for example, Dean's Beans, which you can buy locally, buys from them at $1.41 a pound, green unroasted coffee beans. Organic $1.41. He only deals in organic. He doesn't do conventional. So $1.41 a pound. He brings it here. He pays the shipping costs and all that. He roasts it, and then he resells it to us for $7.99. So they are being paid that for their green beans.
So
That's
he
a good
is a
profit.
direct seller.
For roasting.
But it's not huge though.
It's not?
He's
Going from $1 to $7 is not a good profit.
Well, that's the low end actually. You can go over to Whole Foods and his same coffee is $10.99 or $12.99. One thing I want to mention is, again, if you sign up for my website, I won't send you an annoying email. You have to send you one and say this is it. There's a really great project that gets around all this. Is still the farmers are not getting enough. These people have no electricity. They have no running water. They don't know if they can have school next year. Is that really they need a direct trade relationship. The middleman, even if it's Dean, and I think Dean's doing a good job, and I've supported him for years. Dean had $3 million in sales last year. And he supports local people, of course, but there's a project out of Costa Rica, which I have on my website, where they can roast their own beans. I mean, the only thing is they need the technology and the facilities, roast their own beans, and they ship them to you. So you can subscribe to this service, and they ship you beans, and it's $10 a pound with international shipping. Wow. So it can be done, these direct relationships, and that's really where I think fair trade needs to lead to, is cutting out some of these even extra people involved.
How can all right, so I just want to understand what.
Okay, yeah.
The co-op sells it to Dean's for
Yes.
$1.41. What does the farmer get who has sold it to the co-op?
Okay, that you actually have to talk to the co-ops. I believe I've heard around 80 to 90 cents a pound is what they're receiving. And the co-op then takes the other parts for the cooperative projects.
I'm sorry.
80 to 90 cents a pound.
Okay.
And then the cooperative builds the schools, puts running water, and they decide as a cooperative group. As you saw, unfortunately, in Ethiopia, there were no women involved in that cooperative. So something about fair trade, the more you look into it, there are cooperative principles and equality of gender. The women are picking the beans for 50 cents a day, and the men. Now you got to remember that was not their cooperative. Those women picking the beans. Those are just women working for the corporations.
Oh, so they didn't make that clear at all.
No, it's a little confusing because you start thinking, wow, this doesn't look like a good deal. They're getting 50 cents a day. No, that's not how it works. So that's the pricing, and again, I could go on about pricing forever, but we don't have a ton of time, so I'd love it if you check out my website. I'm developing it all the time and putting information about pricing and little alternatives up there, different companies, how do you discern between Dean's and 21 other cooperative coffees, are called cooperative coffee roasters, are all 100% companies. They do nothing but fair trade. Then there's Green Mountain. So sometimes when you stop at the gas station, you might see Green Mountain has like a organic fair trade. Green Mountain is less than 10%. So they're also the ones providing McDonald's right now. You can go to McDonald's and get fair trade coffee. It's like, oh, geez. It's pretty weird.
Only 10% of the coffee that they buy is that they're able to call it fair trade coffee.
Right, and there's fair trade stipulations, and the farmers have to pay to be part of the fair trade system, which isn't clear in this film. There's a lot that takes place for them to become part of it. The bottom line is they need the contracts. The more people can say we want fair trade and we buy more of it, there'll be more contracts developed with different cooperatives. Although there's lots of cooperatives waiting to become fair trade cooperatives all over the world.
Can you imagine what is shade grown?
Yes.
And then there's another kind.
Yes.
What does that have to do with all this?
This is very important, and I just did a film at a Media Education Foundation, not last Friday night, but the one before, and I could do it here. I'd like to do some more of these films because there's so much to this, and Central America has different issues than Africa. Shade grown means they're not clear cutting the land to let the sun in to make the plants grow faster. And so I have a film that shows this beautifully. It's called Birdsong and Coffee. It's all about the migratory birds and how this is, basically killing the planet, these monocultures where we cut everything down and just plant one thing. So shade grown is a actual certification where they have to keep, how those farmers were kind of in the canopy all the time when they were in cutting? That's what they're doing, is they're not cutting down, they're letting the shade protect the plants, and it protects the habitat. The plants live twice as long that way. When you do conventional cutting down, they live half the time. The plants become very stressed and die. So it's
But you
really
get
an
less
ecological
plants.
issue.
In other words, the idea, you got less plants in there and less coffee beans.
With the
If you don't cut everything down.
Well, it takes
The other
longer for
guys
them to
are there
grow too. It takes
growing.
longer for them to grow. You have to manipulate it
Yeah.
around all the other things, but
Yeah.
it's the way farming's always been done.
But it requires fewer.
It's sustainable, yeah, that's what this other
It sustains
film.
life on all levels as opposed to.
Exactly.
And the other problem with that is in these monocultures, the silt, the Amazon silting up, I mean,
Yeah.
it's affecting the whole planet by doing the monoculture. The
Yeah.
other thing is, it's open for the herbicides and the chemicals, and fair trade doesn't necessarily mean organic.
Right. Remember, he said at one point in the film, he says, for our conventional coffee, we're getting $1.21. Now, again, you have to dig a little deeper and find out, does that mean they haven't gotten the certification yet? It didn't look to me like a lot of the farmers they're showing are really using pesticides. Maybe they are. So you have to ask that. Otherwise, you can go for what they call triple certification when you buy coffee, which would be fair trade, shade grown, organic.
Right.
And most fair trade coffee, if you look closely, will have those 3 seals on it. Indigo roasted, Dean's beans, those are 2 local roasters.
Well, I don't understand. So
Yeah.
if Green Mountain calls themselves fair trade,
Yes.
and it's 10%,
You need to do this.
and really fair trade means absolutely nothing.
Right.
They have a fair trade line that they pay fair trade prices to the farmers, but they're not a fair trade company, and they don't work under fair trade ethic for all their buying.
But yet they use that in their,
It's called greenwashing, to get people like us to buy their coffee, basically.
well, and it works.
It works, but we can also
So-
pressure them to buy more. I mean,
So is the organic have just as crappy standards? I mean, as far as,
Oh, organic just means the production. It doesn't mean anything about how the farmer, I mean, that's a problem here too. There's a domestic fair trade movement, which is something, again, we'll have more films so we can have more discussions. I mean, it's the same thing here. You buy organic spinach from California. We have no idea who picked it, what were they paid, what are their conditions like. So
Well,
organic has
except
nothing to do with
there's-
labor conditions, only has to do with actual practices agriculturally.
yeah, but even the practices, I mean, unless you have some certification program that inspects the soil,
Right,
blah, 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 I mean, it's absolutely nothing. It's just a
right,
way to take your price higher.
right. Well, they're supposed to be certified if they use the word organic.
Yeah, there's good organic certification, both European and, for the coffees.
Yeah.
And for instance, under the Green Mountain label, like Paul Newman's own is
Yeah.
organic and fair trade.
And shade grown.
And shade
He's
grown.
triple, yeah.
All of this stuff?
Paul Newman has coffee.
All
Yeah.
this coffee,
He
yes.
does.
Yeah.
So
And it's
funny
fair
how
trade.
there's a
Shade grown
Oh, yeah.
and organic.
How was it
divergence
Good,
between
excellent.
Organic, which
Where do
doesn't
you find that?
necessarily fair,
I buy mine at
people.
Right,
Shaw's.
right.
They treat it,
Shaw's.
it's like
Yeah.
treat the urgency that you don't
Well,
use
it's down in
pesticides.
Connecticut.
Oh, down there.
Don't,
Stop and
but
Shop
at the
has
same
it.
time,
Really?
don't
Yeah.
pay people what they, whether they're in Ethiopia or, in some farm in California, there's still migrant workers coming up from, getting paid the same thing, 50 cents a
Exactly.
payroll day. I mean,
Exactly.
it's a shame that they weren't linked, but of course now organic is USDA.
Right.
I mean, forget it.
There's
Well,
actually,
forget it.
there's a conference every summer at Hampshire, the NOFA conference, and I was talking to someone who works at CISA, they're the Buy Local Hero Campaign people, and there's going to be a whole day talking about domestic fair trade. So that's something to look out for. And one thing is a lot of farmers around here, CISA, again, is a great organization, but they told me straight up they do nothing with labor practices or environmental practices. Just because they're part of CISA, that means they're a local farm. It doesn't mean they're organic, and it doesn't mean they have any sort of standards for their labor. So domestic fair trade is another level. Like some people are saying, well, this is great, but I don't drink coffee, and I don't like tea, and I don't eat sugar. What do I do? It's like, well, okay, luckily there's quinoa now on that back table there you can look at. There's some different products. If you bake, there's vanilla. bananas at Cornucopia. You can get the only local fair trade bananas that I know of are at Cornucopia. So bananas are a horrible exploitation. I lived in Central America, I saw it. I mean, the chemicals, the labor conditions, everything. So that's a wonderful product if you eat bananas. And there's going to be more and more coming out. This is really starting to become something people are aware of, and they're saying, hey, is it fair trade, is it fair trade? But we also need to start looking locally. You know, we go to our farmers market, a lot of farmers around here use migrants, and a lot of them come from Jamaica and the Caribbean. So it's starting to ask these questions about everything, but coffee is such a simple thing to engage. That's why I wanted to show this film, because so many people drink coffee and like coffee. It's part of our rituals. I'll meet you for coffee. You know, it's like part of our language.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
One